It's always too soon. Hello, I think we're live. The button says live. You want to say hi?
Hi everybody, I am Jennifer. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer and I'm married to this guy.
My name is Misael.
Hey, and who are you married to?
And this is my wife.
We're really nervous and we're hoping that this is just like more laid back. We will, if you want to comment, we will be reading comments, but we will just be doing it on and off because our vision is to have a conversation with each other. So we want to keep growing on that conversation. And so in order not to get derailed, we won't be reading the comments all of the time, if that makes sense. But we still will read them all afterwards. And we really wanted to do this because we really want to support our community. And we really want you to know that you're not alone. So this is just going to be like a conversation like we always have. We talk about everything, and this is something that we've been talking about for years now. So we just decided it's so hard to do videos and to do scripts and then to have to edit them and then post them and then make sure that our kids are okay, I don't know. It's just like such a long process. So we just decided, he just cornered me into this. And he just decided, you know what? I'm just going to set a time and a date and we're going to roll with it. So I hope we're not boring. And I hope that we get to provide some of that support that we aim to give our community. Whether you're in LLDM or you're out. And I just want to be explicit with that. We have no ill intentions, no disrespect. So yeah, I don't know, add something.
Well, I think just a little bit of background on us. We're both, we currently are in Montana as a result of being part of the batallones. And that was back in 2016 that we were sent out here to Montana. And then the reason I think it's important to specify that there is no ill intent from towards people in the church or out of the church is because we just want everybody to feel better. And the reason we became missionaries was because we thought and still think that one of the best things that we can do as humans is to try and improve the lives of those around us. And so we thought that the best way we could do that was by preaching, the good teachings that we had received. And so now, whether you're not in church anymore or still in church, I feel that lives could still improve.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing that this whole situation has caused is frustration,
yes,
doubt,
grief,
loneliness for a lot of people,
so much loneliness.
And just division amongst people. And so we are, of course, no longer part of the church. And as proof of that, everybody who was part of the church kind of unfollowed and kind of started leaving. So,
which was really painful. Are we full on starting now? Because I feel like I could just full on start. And also I feel like this door might this door's kind of cracked.
It might open on its own.
No, I fear some people might just, I don't know, be OCD.
Won't feel like it should be closed. I'll close it.
Yeah. Thank you. We have our little setup here. Thanks, babe.
Oh, everybody just saw my jeans.
Oh. I'm sorry, baby.
No, I'm kidding.
We should have called one of our kids to do it. By the way, our kids are in the next room, and I kind of told them that they could stay up a little bit earlier today. Their bedtime is 7:30, but they seemed really happy about that. But that doesn't mean that they won't come and interrupt us. So if that happens, you'll all have to excuse me, and he'll keep going. So just so you guys know.
And then Red 7, I'd be happy to post this on Reddit. I've kind of been posting more frequently on Reddit.
Yeah,
and
you're bold.
Sure. I think that this will keep the video on YouTube Live, and then I'll be able to either edit a little bit out if I start to trail off, and
Yeah.
then we will. Our plan is to repost this later so that it could both be a resource and just kind of like a radio show, I guess, like a podcast kind of thing for the future. So yes, that's the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, at least they're like on the books that we did this together. By the way, if you want to comment on here, I would like to ask you how you're doing right now.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure we'll be able to keep up.
Hi, Noah.
Noah, hi. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to keep up with the comments, by the way. It's not many of us. But we appreciate that people are here because, like Jenny said at the beginning, we do this regularly by ourselves. And I'm sure, like everybody talks to their spouse, of course, but I think the things that we discuss most often are what can we do to help?
Yes.
So that's what we were wanting
Jasmine.
to share the most. And yes, the situation is the leader of the church being arrested. The situation has been everything that has come to light about his inappropriate behaviors. And then the situation also includes him maintaining that he was innocent and then taking a plea deal. And now the situation is that has had very little impact on many of the people that we thought or were hoping, at the very least, that once this thing kind of progressed and either he went to trial or he pled guilty, which I honestly didn't think he would, but that is the whole situation that I mean. It's so much that it's hard to just.
It's a big situation. No, yeah, definitely, it's a big situation. Situation is also that our lives were derailed. Our whole lives were centered around becoming missionaries. I would always tell Misael, I know I'm going to be a diaconisa, and I would try to do the best that I could. And those who know me in church, I mean, no one's perfect. I wasn't perfect, but I knew that's what I wanted, and that's what I pursued. Even after we were married, we went through a lot of life events. I don't want to call them trials because I don't want to put that on God. I don't want to say that God wanted me to go through, the stuff that I went through, being sent over here, but hard life events, and we were willing to go through all of that because all we wanted to do really has always been to help people. And the best way that we found to help people was to preach Jesus and to preach his gospel. So for us, that was just something that moved us, spurred us into action, and that's what we were trying to do. So, well, that's not happening anymore. We're not affiliated with this church. So just in terms of the church, obviously, we're not affiliated with the Light of the World Church anymore. So that's also part of the situation and of what's happening now. So
we're not preaching for them anymore.
Yeah, we're not preaching their doctrine anymore.
But that doesn't mean that. This is also something that I kind of wanted to mention, that we're not preaching their doctrine, but we did learn some things, from those teachings. Yeah. And those things we had already taken to heart, you know, and
sure.
This whole thing that's happened is that the things we took and learned and began to live out in our lives are the same things that made us no longer be able to be part of the church.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite lines when I would go preaching, and I had the blessing, if that's what you want to call it, or the opportunity to speak to long-time pastors of other churches. I spoke to like Mormon pastors. I spoke to Jehovah's Witness, like ministers, and many people who had been either biblical,
Sure.
just
Bible literate.
Yeah, very Bible literate people. That's a great word. So I had spoken to many of those, and I would always tell them, because I sincerely believe this. I would always tell them, if you can show me that you serve and worship God better than I do, I would happily leave this church and join you, because the goal of preaching, in my opinion, was always to find God and to serve Him better, right? Absolutely. And so, because of that, I studied the Bible. Because of that, I would take the teachings that I would learn and the understanding that I had gained, and I would try to apply it as best as I possibly could. Yeah. And I also, maybe egotistical a little bit, I would try to not be wrong. And so all of those things kind of came together, and when the things started coming to light, and here's the thing: we have people that we know who have told us that they were victims,
who were personally affected by this.
And so it's not just that; it's the fact that his own lawyers early on began to say that the things he had done were not technically crimes. That these were consensual adults, but that's adultery. Yeah. I know that adultery would not go over well around my inner circle. Definitely not my wife. But even like, I could only imagine the disappointment, from my parents, my extended family, my friends. Like, what a letdown! And
absolutely.
And I'm just a nobody. I was just a nobody in the church, and so if that's something that was so.
By just a nobody, you mean like a member, a missionary?
Yeah, just. Okay.
And not like an apostle or like even a pastor. I see that there's some questions coming in.
Yes.
I do kind of want to. You kind of went on there.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. But let me try to remember, because I did have like some mental notes that I kind of wanted to add.
Let me read this real quick. The man was a big lie and money was the goal. Do y'all consider religion even an option? Yes.
So before you elaborate on that, I do want to say that you mentioned that a lot of the things that we learned there were good, and that based on those things, you would preach and you would teach. But I would say, and this is true to anybody who knew us when we were in Lake Havasu, we would hear this a lot. Anybody who knew us and heard us preach or give like youth studies, we wouldn't always go exactly by what we were told to go by. And a really, like, an example that's still in my mind is one time we were giving a youth study, and we were told that the best way to go about the subject that we were going to talk about, which was, I think it was like marriage or something like that, like dating and marriage. And he was told to say that once you fornicate, your marriage is doomed forever. What starts off wrong, and I know that a lot of people who have been in LLDM have also heard this narrative. What starts out the wrong way ends the wrong way, and it's just like doomed from the beginning. And my husband was told to say that, and he didn't. And that happened a lot of the times, because we thought to ourselves, well, the ministers and the pastors who are telling us to say this probably have just heard it somewhere else, but actually that's not what the Bible teaches in truth. So we would just say like, okay, well, just don't say that, and then just keep moving forward and say what the Bible teaches. So even though in LLDM there were a lot of good teachings, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We really, like he said, like, there are memories and there are teachings that we still hold dear to our hearts. I have to be fair and say that it is not because of their teachings that solely that we are the people that we are today, or that we have the knowledge that we do today, or even back then that we were able to preach the way that we used to preach. And I just want to say that because I remember that a lot of brothers and sisters would tell him, like, brother, I had never heard it explained that way, but it really blessed me, or like comments as such. When we get out of church, I was talking to a then member of the church, and she mentioned this. She was like, well, your husband was a good preacher because he had the teaching of LDM. And that's not fair. And I just would like to say that, like, yes, absolutely, there is good teaching in there, and there's a lot that we learned through LDM, but that's not the entire story. And I think that it's really important to be able to understand the entire story, because we have now found that the church that we belong to, we can no longer stay in, and I think that that is a very scary thing. And I think that in order to be able to proceed, you have to come to realizations, and you have to understand that if they already lied to us, or you have to come to understand that there are lies that are associated with the things that they tell us. In order to be able to heal, in order to be able to move on, you have to come to terms with that and understand that. But that means that you actually have to think about things critically, and that you have to say, wait, no, this is fair and this is the truth. I don't know. I might have said that confusing, but I hope that makes sense.
I think it did.
Sorry, that was long.
No, that was good. And then on that note, and I also want to address what Super Tiger Knee says. So he says the man was a big lie and money was the goal. I agree. Money is the goal, and fame is the goal. In the Light of the World Church, like in many mega churches, which I find it so interesting that, like, there's all this terminology outside of the Light of the World Church that applies to the church, but we don't know it because we are kind of
in the bubble.
Kept in the bubble.
Yeah.
And so the Light of the World Church is a mega church, like so many other mega churches out there. And the most important thing to a mega church is its image. And so because it's a business, at the core, it's a business. And so like Super Tiger says, yes, it was a Nason, unfortunately, for us and for many people, unfortunately, he's not a man of God, apostle of Jesus Christ. He has kind of backed himself into a corner where it's undeniable that he's not a man of God. Does that mean that everything he says is completely useless and cannot help anyone? No, because again, it goes back to the image, right? So his image is that of a preacher who reads the Bible, who knows the Bible, and who can recite many teachings from the Bible. And so if you take those teachings at their face value, you will learn, right, biblical teaching. And so in that regard, that's what we're kind of trying to, that's the fine line that we're trying to walk by saying there's a lot to learn, but yes, at its core, that is not a church, the church of God, is definitely. And do we consider religion even an option? Yes, because religion still has a lot of very good things to offer. There are very few organizations who will legitimately try and help people around them when their goal is not their image. I mean, there's a church here in Montana that, regularly hosts events for the community, and all they do is invite you to their church, and so, you can, I think, this is just personal opinion, I think you can go and you can listen to the good messages from very well-educated, knowledgeable preachers and learn so much from them. One of the reasons I started really opening my eyes to the way that the Light of the World Church kind of conducts itself is because I started listening to other preachers and seeing that when the goal is not to subject people to the election, then there is so much good, honest teaching out there.
Yeah.
And so, I think that there are very few places where you can go and find people who truly care about your soul, your well-being.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's not always the case, so I do think it's an option, but I do now always will recommend that you go in there kind of expecting something to not be as it is, an aspect of it.
Yeah.
Someone there will try to be not as upfront with you as they should.
You have to
But I
think
do
critically. Yeah.
exactly. And even the Light of the World Church, I just wanted to mention a couple of things that, like we said at the beginning, this isn't just supposed to be like, let's rant, let's just talk ill about people of the church or the church itself. I think that if you're in the church or you know people in the church, the first thing that you can do to try and help them either leave or just be more aware so that they're not taken advantage of is to invite people to try to fix the broken things in the church. It's going to be very hard. And that was the one thing that I kept coming up against, because when I was part of the church, I was actually, I would translate the apostolic letters. A lot of times somebody would just send me a letter that he had written, and then I would translate it and then send it back. I also received a lot of the orthodoxy topics that would later be sent out in English every, what was it, like first or third Sunday of the month.
Yeah.
I would translate many of those, and there was broken systems within the church where the hymnal would be updated and only some people had the updated version. The hymnal was, Berea made a profit from the sales of the hymnal. Yeah. The choir, those uniforms are sold and are way overpriced. Like there's so many broken systems within the church that if you try to fix those, or if you get your relatives to try to fix them, they're going to bump up against corruption almost immediately, and the whole, as missionaries, we were always supposed to cover all the expenses of the church that we were renting out and cover our own expenses, and then put aside 10% of our wages, because that 10% we would bring directly to Nason, I guess, the apostle at the time. And so we had to bring that money cash. And so like on multiple occasions, I was carrying around like $8,000 or $9,000, $10,000 cash. And I said a few times, why can't I just deposit this at the bank like any other organization, who legitimately files their taxes, and then write you a check so that there's a paper trail of where the money is coming from and who it's being given to. Right. And they would always say, no, you have to bring the money cash, because this is God's money and it's not supposed to be traced. But
that doesn't make sense. There's no transparency there. So we were still in church. We were like, well, that doesn't sound right. But then we were like, no, like, any, like, I don't know, just be careful what you think. And that is something that is just so prevalent, the fear. Be careful what you're thinking. Were you going to read something off of there? Because there are a few messages I would like to address.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Thank you, Anna.
If you try to do good things in the church, I think it's important to invite your family members who are still in the church to try and fix those broken systems within the church themselves, because there are some people whose lives have been improved by the teachings of the church, and that is undeniable. And that is like the biggest argument that the church uses to try and say that they are the true church of Jesus, which, I mean, there's good examples in the AA system, like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Like that does not equal only church leading to Christ.
And so but in my experience, when you try and address those broken systems or those big problems where, like you said, like telling young couples that their firstborn is condemned until they turn 14 because they fornicated or did whatever it is before marriage. That's not biblical.
That's not.
That shouldn't be preached because it's not a teaching of Christ. And if these people could be forgiven for their crimes against children, and their corruption and their lack of paying taxes and their misogyny towards women, an 18-year-old who got married before an official ceremony, God will forgive them. Immediately God will forgive them.
And that's what the Bible preaches. I'm sorry, I just have to interject there. That's what the Bible preaches.
So trying to fix those things, or trying to kind of just maneuver into a better path, you will bump into ministers stuck in their old ways. You will bump into that one grandma, that one grandpa in the church who's like so zealous of the doctrine that it is not defensible. And so to me, those are the biggest examples of where we can point to and say, how is this the church of God if there are weeds all over the place?
And that's something that he used to tell me a lot while we were still in church. And I would just be like, whoa, slow down there, buddy. I don't think you should be talking that way, because fear, which I want to address because, Jasmine, I see your messages. But so you're saying, what I'm hearing from you is that inviting church members to look at the brokenness within the church and inviting them to come up with a solution can be helpful to just, yes. I don't know, maybe nudge them in the right direction. Like, we're not here to say like, you have to get out. Obviously, we are out because we decided that there's no way that we could stay in an institution where people are getting hurt and where there's spiritual abuse happening. But not everybody works the same way. I personally wouldn't join a Catholic church. I've looked into their doctrine, and their doctrine is actually very different than what I thought it was, what I was taught it was. I was taught that they were, taught to worship idols and all of this stuff, which is actually not based on their doctrine. It's based on what like some members do. Most of the members do. And I think we can all relate to that statement, huh? Like, most of the members do. But gosh, I think I lost my point there.
Well, you find it. That teaching can be true. Red 7 says, we were taught because a man is an apostle, he must be innocent. That teaching can be true, and Nason could be guilty, but that means Nason is not an apostle.
That's true.
Yep, I agree with that.
I agree too.
I think, I'm sorry for sometimes the way I speak, but in my head it's funny, and so that's why I say it like this. But Jesus said that you will know them by their fruits, right?
I was gonna.
Very straightforward. You don't know a man of God because he says he's a man of God. You know a man of God because he acts like a man of God.
Yeah.
And then this also leads me to, judging is not the same as observing or analyzing.
Identifying, discerning.
Right. Discerning and just looking at something and describing that thing because you are a discerning, intelligent human being does not mean you are judging. And this is one of the church's biggest defenses of the apostle, right? Because Paul said, no one can judge me, not even I judge me, right? Only God can judge me. And that's true. But he wasn't saying that because he's an apostle and because he was speaking of the apostleship. He was saying that because we are no one to judge. Even the apostles do not use their apostleship to judge. Jesus did not use his place as the Son of God to judge and condemn. They use it to teach and to bring us close to God. Men of God do. Honest men of God, true men of God. And so the idea that a wrong is happening and you call it out does not make you a judge. And you can definitely say, mistreating children or treating children in an inappropriate way is wrong, because
Right.
it is.
And God wants you to do that. I'm sorry to interject again, but God wants you to do that. He wants you to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. And He wants you to act as He would. I mean, if you believe in God, then you believe that God is against this. And there is nothing wrong with pointing that out and saying that it's against this, that He would be against this. I think that doing the opposite and saying that, well, only God will judge him, but God still elected this man to take us to Him, and He is still elected this man who God knew beforehand was going to commit these crimes. That is just a terrible judgment of God's character, and I think that that's scary to say. And so so I definitely agree with you that judging is not the same thing as discerning. In fact, we're supposed to discern, and that's what we're invited to over and over again in the Bible. So on that topic, I did write some stuff down on that, because I was just thinking about how we are, when we're in church, how we're taught to think about the apostleship and about their fruits, right? We believe so much that we know them. And we're like, yes, I know them because I can see their fruits. And we attribute the church's growth to them. We attribute the building of the temples and hospitals. We all attribute that to them. But why don't we attribute it to ourselves? Why aren't we just fair? And it's not it has nothing to do with being humble or not. It just has to do with discerning, right? And to being able to correctly pinpoint, who we can attribute these things to. So why don't we attribute it to the brothers who actually get out and sell roses, the brothers who actually don't, take the bread out of their mouth to feed others or to donate to the church. That's who those works should be attributed to, because that's who is literally doing those works. But in the Light of the World Church, we are taught to attribute all of those works to the men of God. And even if they don't donate, even if on Mother's Day they are celebrating their own mother, sometimes like even in a huge way, and we're the ones outside selling roses. And this is not out of bitterness. Believe me, it's not. I loved selling roses.
I hated it. Every minute of it.
Didn't I love it? I loved it. I loved selling roses. I loved feeling part of a community, and I love doing this. This is not out of bitterness. But why are we attributing these things? Why are we lying to ourselves and saying that these fruits belong to this man? I'm going to tell you what I have seen as their fruits. And again, we know that hearing this as a member of LDM can feel almost as a sin. And we would never want you to feel that way. And I understand that it's scary, but if you would bear with us, I think that this is so important, because, and I hate to put it this way, but now your salvation is really on the line. You either believe God or you believe what they are telling you, because the two are no longer aligned. You can't say that a man who would commit these atrocities is backed up by God, and that God chose him knowing that this would happen, and that God is okay with that. You cannot say, please do not say that Jesus himself would do the same thing, as I've heard some members say. That's heresy. So when going back to discernment, watching him and seeing his fruits, I know we were going to bring this up later, and I'm sorry, I'm going to bring it up right now.
Okay.
But Samuel did say himself that when he saw the ministers' children, that when he saw the behavior of his own ministers' children, he could really see his own minister's character. When we see Nason's children, what does that tell us about his character? I mean, if you really are concerned that this is a man of God and you really believe in his word, then all right, let's roll with it. What does this tell us about his character? How do his children behave? And if they do mess up, just like all of us, how is that addressed? What does a repentance look like? All right. Now, let's go back to the case and what's actually happening right now. If we want to look at the first letters that he was sent out, when he was first arrested, he said he did not need anyone to back him up because God was going to back him up. And then right after that, he got really expensive lawyers. That doesn't sound to me like fruits of faith. Right now, he also declared himself guilty. That doesn't sound to me like waiting on God to deliver him.
And I mean, if he didn't do it, that's a lie.
And if he didn't do it, that's a lie.
And a man of God doesn't lie. That's why I said that he kind of backed himself into a corner. Either he is a man of God and he's telling the truth, so he pled guilty, it's true, or he is not a man of God and he did do those things and he admitted to them. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
And I would say, all right, fine. Let's say that you're right, and let's say that it's just like gray matter, right? Like it's just a gray area, but to think that you keep having to make all of these excuses for a man that's supposed to come from God, from a man who God sent out, that you keep having to make all of these excuses and all of these, what do you call that? Like, help me out with the word. But not just excuses, but all of these, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, coming to my mind right now, all of these corrections. He is innocent and God will prove it and he's not going to do anything and blah, blah, blah. And then God didn't prove it, right? God didn't prove what you thought he was going to prove. So then you go back to, oh, no. Actually, because he saw that he had no way out, he declared himself guilty. No, guys, like, come on, believe God. Believe God has power. Believe God that God does deliver his innocent, his children, so believe that he would, or believe God now and believe that he has power to actually show you the truth. And I think that that's something that's so prevalent with LLDM. You don't think for yourself. I'm not speaking to any of you. Let's just talk about me, right? Let's just focus on us. I think that when I was from LLDM, I know I didn't think for myself. I always waited for his letters. I always waited for him to tell me what the next thing I needed to focus on was. I didn't believe that the Holy Spirit could speak directly to me. And I'm coming from a place where if you are atheist, I mean, all my love to you. If you are whatever you are, all my love to you. I'm coming from a place where I don't mean to say, because I know I am talking about God a lot right now. I don't mean to say that that is the only way, or I'm not trying to preach. I guess I'm trying to say I'm not trying to preach. If something if I have learned something now, is that we really don't know what we don't know, and all we can do is work with what we do know. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's great.
I touched too many points.
That's okay. I thought that you made really good points. And so I like this comment and this conversation between Tiger Knee and Red 7. So Red 7 says, in quotes, "I'm nothing." That sounds like something LDM taught us. I'm agnostic, but if you believe in a higher being that created you, then you are not nothing. You are that higher power's creation. And that does sound great. And that's a good point. And then he goes on to say, we need to rid ourselves of these old LDM habits of humillación. I completely agree with that. I think I said it earlier, the whole, I was nobody, right? And
yeah.
I've never considered that a show of humility, because I just consider it in the grand scheme of things, that whole view of like, I'm just a speck of dust in an indifferent universe, floating in the void of space kind of thing. That's usually how I've seen it, and how like at the end of the day, all I can do is try my best and then hope that at least my loved ones remember me kind of thing. That's how I say it, not out of humility but I agree. My point is that I agree that we have to rid ourselves of that, because one of the biggest things that it does is that it takes away our uh, it um, it takes away our value, even if we're not doing it as a false show of humility. When we say that we are nothing, right, or that we don't know, we're also kind of excluding ourselves from any type of accountability, and that's where such a big part of the problem lies with the church, and not just this church, actually many churches, is that the members feel so not empowered to do something about things that everybody kind of just starts to go with the flow. When I said earlier that I was a translator and I was like I was just seeing so many things around me that were needing maintenance, that I was like, well, you know what? If nobody's going to teach us the English songs, that I'm just going to start a YouTube channel and I'm just going to do it for myself.
Yeah.
And just to practice. And I started practicing them, and then after I started practicing, I was like, well, I might as well post this on YouTube, because I mean, if I sing them alone, it's still not going to really make a difference. And so that's why I did that, and then that's why I translated. That's why I joined the missionary group, and that's why I would do everything, because I was like, even if I don't make a big difference, I can start somewhere. And so that also, down the line, I know that helped me in being like, well, you know what? I actually have to take responsibility for myself. And the problem, and you're going to find this with a lot of your family members or a lot of your friends who are still in the church, that where do they go if Nason forgives their sins? Who's going to forgive their sins if they leave Nason? Right? It's the lack of accountability. Because every year I get to go to Guadalajara, or I get to go, I spend a few $1,000s and my sins are forgiven, and I start fresh again.
Yeah.
Where are they going to find that
convenience?
Yeah. Who's going to give them that certainty to say, as of
You'll
today,
be good here.
You're good again.
Yeah.
That's what keeps most people there.
Yeah.
To be honest, because it's impossible that we get emotional. I'm just thinking back now. It's impossible that we get emotional every Holy Supper, when for weeks before the Holy Supper, it's the same topic of consecrate. And then for weeks after the Holy Supper, it's the same topic of hold on to this blessing, and then like we don't. It's kind of like a New Year's resolution thing, and it's even equated to New Year's in the church, the Holy Supper is. But then we're just kind of like, this will last me a couple days and then I'm good, and then I'll do this again next year. And so that lack of accountability, makes you go, if I leave, who's gonna
look out for me? Essentially, that's what we think, because we think like we're gonna keep sinning anyway. So who's gonna redeem me? Who's gonna look out for me?
And that's biblical. You redeem yourself after having accepted Christ. And I only did the quotes because I know there are some people who don't believe in this, but whether you believe or you don't believe, the gist is you redeem yourself by getting better and not making the same mistake over again.
Right.
That's how you redeem yourself. Bible or not Bible, the way you are forgiven is by not doing it again. And so it's simple as that. But we're so afraid to take the accountability, the responsibility of our souls into our own hands, that it's easier to, I'll believe what they tell me as long as they got my back.
Exactly.
And as as bad as it sounds, Nason is willing to put his neck out for them.
Yeah.
He's willing to say, you come to me and I'll take the blame and you'll be good. And so that's very appealing. It's very appealing to have somebody who, despite you, will look out for you, or says they will look out for you. By the way, that transaction that Nason invites the church to take part in, to say, I will take the blame so that you can be cleared, that's not biblical.
I know, that's my biggest argument every time I like have that's something that does get to me. But I think that that's like a really good a way to frame it. You know, there is so much convenience that goes on here, and in the Holy Supper, when he says that he will take on our sins. We were just talking about this in the
I'm
morning.
so sorry. I want to address this super quick. Jasmine, you prayed God for 3 years. This is from Noah Iglesias. So he can answer your prayers, and he finally did when a son pleaded guilty. Just want to bring attention to that comment that I saw.
Yes, and that goes back to what we were saying, believe God.
Yeah.
So
Trust in God.
Yeah.
If you believe in God.
If you believe in God. Yeah, so I lost track.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I didn't want to.
Noah's fault.
I didn't want to interrupt you. There have been times that I've been wanting to say something, but it's okay. I should have like a notepad. It's really my fault. But so you were saying that, you know, you go out and the way that you redeem yourself. Jesus says also that whatever you can't redeem, or like as long as you're trying, Jesus will redeem, you know, your sins. Jesus will redeem you. Believe God. I know it sounds scary and I know it sounds so hard, but I just want to say it with all the love of my heart, like all the love in my heart. I just want to tell you, you can trust God. He never meant for you to have to, like, I'll put it this way. It's easier to believe a man than it is to believe God. If God says that he will forgive your sins, and if God says that you are protected with him, then believe him. Now, this man is saying, and we were taught that we can't reach God without him, and that he does take on our sins during the Holy Supper. And we were talking about this, and Misael was like, well, it's not really the doctrine. You know, the doctrine doesn't really state that the apostles' job during the Santa Cena is to take on our sins. But we know, LDMers and ex-LDMers, we know that that is exactly what they infer and what they preach and what they make us believe. Because I remember very clearly when Samuel said that his own brother asked him, but aren't you scared? Aren't you scared to take on their sins? Aren't you scared about what will happen to you? And what did he say? He said, yes, of course I'm scared, but I love him so much. That immediately creates so much love from us to him. It makes us give him the glory and say, thank you so much for redeeming me. Thank you so much for taking on my sins. So that's the first thing. And then we can see clearly that this is a narrative that is pushed and is preached over and over again. But Jesus said that he would be the last sacrifice. Jesus said that he was the Lamb of God who came to die for us. That glory belongs to Jesus and to no one else. And for me, that was enough. For me, when I realized that, that was enough to say, whoa, no, how can I give the glory that does belong to God to a man? And a lot of LDMers, like if you talk to them about this, I'm sure that they'll try to explain it away. Like, I'm sure that they'll try to say something about it. We're supposed to be having a conversation. Like, look,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. But I'm sure that, like, I just think that it'll work better if we flow with each other versus like stopping and then giving, like, you know, it's basically like we're making our own videos and we're just like compiling it.
All right.
And I see, and I want to say that because I see that that what Jasmine was saying is something that I was unsure of speaking about, and it's just the fear-mongering, the fear that we have to go through, and the reason why LLDM needs to impose all that fear onto us is because there's no preaching, there's no correct preaching of the Holy Spirit that will convict us and will transform us. There's no transformation. There's just fear that kind of keeps us there. That's why you see people getting out and then coming back, and getting out and drinking and then coming back. That's why you see people getting out and then going crazy and trying drugs or whatever they want to do, because there was no real conviction or transformation by the Holy Spirit. And I would say that's not their fault. That's not the individual's fault. That is a consequence of that fear-mongering.
So when you do things out of fear, you will eventually get over that fear.
Yeah.
And so
even if it's just like for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
And so the church does have a lot of different fears that they play on. Like Jasmine said on here, not believing in the apostle. That's when the Bible says that you have to believe in the one God sent. He's speaking specifically of Jesus Christ. But the church uses anything attributed to Jesus or to the prophets or to the apostles as kind of belief in God Himself. So that's a type of fear. Your children is also a big fear, that if you don't do something right, God will punish you.
That's the biggest
by
fear.
punishing your children.
Your children.
That's another fear. And so, of course, like the answer to all of these fears is always come back to the church.
Yeah.
Go talk to your minister. Go pray about it. In the church, as the church teaches you to pray. So the church has all the answers to all of the fears that they push onto you. Look, I want to also take a moment and say, if you feel like you have to stay in the church, that's okay. Stay in the church, but don't be driven by these fears. Don't be driven by this blind submission to the church's dogmas. And so that's why I said, if you want to stay in the church, be a force for good, because in my experience, that will always make you bump into the corruption that is rampant within the church.
It is rampant. And I would also add to that, don't do something, right? Don't do something that you can't live with. So whatever you choose to do, make sure that you are able to live with yourself. Look, I want to say to everybody, I have heard from even people who I love, well, the teaching, this is what they'll say: the teaching is good. So, and it has helped me, it has blessed me in different ways, and nobody who I know has been hurt by this man. But I would just like to tell you, this is generational, right? I'm 5th generation in this church. So this is generational.
Was.
Oh my gosh, nice catch. So this is generational. So if you stay, there are high chances that your daughters will stay, and your sons too. I mean, this didn't only happen to girls. So it could happen to your daughters. It could happen to your daughters' daughters. Are you willing to take, I don't know, are you willing to bet on that? Yeah, are you willing to risk that? And are you okay with that? So I would just say, something that's so important for me now, it's making decisions that I can live with. And I think that that's so important. When you're sitting on your bed alone at night before you go to sleep, can you live with yourself? And are you burdened by your conscience, basically? So I would just like to add that to what you just said. Somebody sent me a message because her comment was too long, and I guess she couldn't post it in 2 different postings. You know who you are.
Some people were arguing with me, saying that he didn't get justice and that they follow God, not men. So I asked, why didn't he trust God and go through trial and get the innocent verdict that they believed they'd get? And they don't follow God. At this point, they are fanatics following a pedophile, a rapist. So
I didn't read that last part.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's very bluntly put.
If you are waiting on God, then you do go, then the thing to do would have been to go through the trial, right? And you know what? I don't think everybody has heard or has read into what happened, but one of the things that, from what I understand, happened is that there is a video out there that they found where he appears in the video, and that video, in that video, they're doing, sexual things. And that video was going to be shown to the jury.
Yeah.
So even he knows, and the church knows, that And when I say the church, usually I'm referring to the leadership, not the general membership. The
Right.
general membership usually is not up to
Doesn't
date.
know. Yeah.
So
anything.
for any general membership people out there, what happened is that they were told ahead of time that this video would be shown to the jury. And there comes a point where something gets impossible to deny, right? When there's visual evidence. And this is why, like, if you start connecting the dots, this is why early on in the process, they said, they started giving like videos in church, lectures in church about what deep fakes were. So deep fake is like a technology where you can replace somebody in a video with somebody else's face. So they were preparing the church already in case anybody came across this video,
Right.
because it apparently circulated outside of the court for a little bit. So if anybody came across this video, they were preparing the church so that the church could say, well, that's just this deep fake technology. It's not actually him. So they were going to show this video to the jury, and then it would become kind of public knowledge that he was in this sex video. And so at that point, I think he was advised to plead guilty, because it's better to say you're guilty than to show people that you're guilty, right? And so that's
you
one
can
theory.
take that back.
Right.
Yeah. And it's true that the church is always prepared. Like, they always prepare the church beforehand, before anything happens. So he's in cahoots, I guess, with leadership in church.
Oh, for sure.
And then whatever, before anything happens, they are preparing the church for that to happen. You guys, I do want to reiterate that
Exactly, Justin.
that we just don't want to be offensive. It's not our intention to be offensive, but we are not going to shy away from the truth. We don't want to do that, and we feel like God does not want us to do that. So we're just speaking.
So I have, and I'll speak just for myself. Sure. I have a lot of distrust for the leadership of the church, because, as I've mentioned, I was a missionary. I dealt with the leadership of the church a lot. And there is actually something real quick that I want to bring up, that one of the things that the church is failing at is helping boys transition into men. And the reason I stress boys into men is because there's so many ministers in the church. So again, I'm referring to the leadership of the church, that are so petty and are so immature for even just like a standard man out in the world, and how a man should behave himself, which is like to an extent like just righteously, right? Not trying to hurt anybody is my point. So, but in the church, because of the lack of accountability that I mentioned earlier, where Nason takes all of the apostle in turn takes all of the sin, and he gets all the blame, and everybody else gets off pretty easy. This kind of goes into the ministers, and they also kind of like act as if they can do no wrong. And I do have a problem with that, because they kind of perpetuate misogynistic, like domestic abuse is pretty prevalent in the church, and not just a lot of the world church, many churches, because the men are not taught to take responsibility for their actions. They're not taught to face the consequences of the things they do wrong. And so they become leaders, though they're not prepared. They're very underprepared and too immature and petty to have a position like that. And I'm sorry to say this, but Nason, you can see that in his son, who, this is public record information, who has had multiple arrests for driving under the influence, DUIs. I saw earlier in the comments that we don't know Nason personally, but there are many people who do, who will now, because he's the apostle, no longer speak of their experiences with him. But you will find those people who knew Nason when he was a youth, and they say, oh, he was like his son. All those things that his son gets accused of, that was Nason back in the day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he became, a leader. But that mentality, that immaturity, that lack of responsibility is still there, and that is something that I had always had huge problems with, because these are people, the men, especially the ministers, these are people in charge of like counseling and advising entire congregations,
Yeah,
and they do so selfishly
they do.
that usually like the man of the house gets off and everybody else has to submit, and
Yeah.
that's not biblical, that's not godly, and it creates way more problems, because these people then go on to do worse things because they pay so little consequences.
Yeah. And one of the things that I want to add to that, it's
Adoraim is a minister now in California somewhere, and
Mhm.
it's just promotion after promotion. There's a term for it out in the world. Out in the world.
Oh my
There's
gosh,
a term
what's going
for
on
it,
today?
like that is very well known. That is failing upwards. You know, like
Yeah.
when men, usually men, and I have nothing against men. I happen to be one, but like they don't do well, but because they are like in those positions already, then they get the next one and the next one and the next one, you know. So that happens a lot in the church. Men fail upwards,
Yeah.
and then everybody who tries to do better kind of gets squeezed out.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyways.
We have so many stories, you guys, and there's so many things that I would love to go over with you and just tell you about. Feels like we're talking to friends, so this is really cool. I do want to add one thing that you were just talking about, and it's just the way that it's one of the ways that we are brainwashed and how this kind of goes. So, Nason, if you've paid attention, there's very little that an apostle will say in terms of, I don't know, getting to the nitty gritty. Like when they talk more like,
Big picture.
yeah, big picture, more vaguely, right? But then we go home and our ministers are the ones who are telling us the apostle said this, and the apostle said that men are supposed to do this, and women, you are supposed to submit. And so you're like, oh my goodness, well, the apostle said that. You know,
Yeah.
these are the men who he sent to our church, and they're saying that the apostle said that. So I will submit to whatever they're telling me to submit to, right? Now, to cover their backs, though, the apostle never actually says it. So if anything goes wrong and people start complaining, they'll say, "No, it's because that minister was actually wrong," but you've never heard the apostle say that.
Yeah.
You know, so over and over again, I was raised to immediately be able to just do that for myself, I guess, to make excuses. It's what Misael would always tell me. Like, you're just making excuses, and my goodness, I was good at it. To be honest with you, I actually got really good at like compartmentalizing just different things. And that's one of the ways that we are taught to that's one of the ways that they win, one of the ways that they keep us in line, if that makes sense, because we have nothing to say against anyone in particular. Or how can I say this? It's just one of the ways that they disarm us, because we're not able to say like, no, this is the doctrine and this is wrong. But it's actually, no, once you want to complain, they'll tell you, no, well, actually, it was just this minister or these brothers or this rumor that was going around. And you're just left thinking, like, you're just left not being able to process and saying that these teachings are actually coming from the apostle, are actually coming from higher on up. So I think that that's really important to point out, because again, I understand that there's so much fear regarding this, but I think that the way that we start to process that fear and keep it from immobilizing us is to actually think critically and actually think fairly about how the whole LLDM process works.
Yeah.
Gosh, you guys, tell me if I'm talking too much or if I'm not
No,
making
you're
sense.
not.
Because
I'm talking too much. But it's past 1 hour.
Yes, but I also want to say, because I see that people are really talking about like the way that they scare us,
Yeah.
you know, and I really want to just say, like, I understand being scared. It was so scary when I got out. It was so scary to just, I never thought, so in my personal experience, when I got out, I didn't get out and doubt whether or not I should be back in. For me, when I heard that young girls were being hurt, I believed in God. I guess I'm gonna put it that way, because we are taught to believe in the apostle. Um, so if I would have believed in the apostle, then I wouldn't have been able to believe in God in this instance, because God is against child abuse. God is against all abuse, and all sin. So for me, when I heard that people were being hurt, I was out. That was it for me. I was out. So I never thought that I should come back in, but I did fear with just my salvation in my own life, and I did ask myself, what now? What am I going to do? What am I going to teach my children? I knew that I couldn't teach my children to honor this man who has done dishonorable things, but I didn't know where to go from there. So I understand how scary it is, but I just want to encourage you, if you still believe in God, that God is trustworthy, and that you can trust him to pull you through this, and that you don't actually need a dishonorable man's prayer to be close to God. If you don't believe in God, if whatever you call yourself, then I just want to encourage you as well. You know, sometimes like we don't go through so much fear, but we go through a lot of pain, a lot of like withdrawal pains and grief. And I just want to encourage you that it gets better from here. You know.
No, yeah.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes, no, keep going. Come on.
Anna says, I remember when you guys were out, there was a rumor going around that you guys were making your own religion.
Really?
That's so funny.
That's you. I've never heard that rumor before.
Yeah, we heard a lot of rumors about ourselves, but not that one.
We heard that we were apostates. We heard that we were, just a lot of rumors about ourselves.
And then this was actually one of the things we wanted to touch on. One thing you hear a lot is, if I leave the church, where do I go? That is a huge fear, life after LDM. I had actually prepared a little bit about this, and you know what? I don't want to take up too much time, so I'll just touch on it, and I think we can set this up again to do it again and continue this another day.
When would can you guys comment?
Yeah, definitely feel free to comment when works best for you, because
this actually worked really well. The kids didn't interrupt us.
So the thing that I wanted to say regarding what now, life after LLDM, is just like I was saying about the whole accountability, and we would go to the Holy Supper and then everybody's sins were forgiven and everybody started fresh. You know, that was done for us, you know, and a lot of the times, because we grew up in very bubbled off, closed off communities within ourselves, like we were always told, like, oh, don't be friends with people not from church, don't hang out with them because they're going to pull you away. You know, all those things were kind of done for us. But now it's up to us to try a little bit harder to extend ourselves into these communities, and that's what we're honestly trying to do. I don't care if you're LDM. I don't care if you're not LDM. I don't care if you believe in God or you don't believe in God. But we have a shared experience that if we don't try and hold on to one another in one way or another, like it doesn't have to be like this, of course, but you know, I've reached out to my brothers more. I've reached out to my parents more, because before it was like, I only have time for church and the visitors of the church and the members of this local
quality
church.
of life is so much better. Yeah, that's
so
true.
So those things are kind of forced onto us, you know, community is forced onto us. But now we find ourselves having to extend ourselves outward and trying to hold on to the community that we share something in common with. And I just want to say that I feel like this is my community. People who are not afraid to think for themselves, people who want to move forward, not necessarily move past all of this, because I don't think you just move past this. I think that this is just, part of our shared experience. It's an experience that we've all shared.
Right.
But we do move forward.
Yeah.
And I invited my wife to do this, and I'm so happy that so many people joined us and that there were so many things going on in the comments. And now I'm a little bit sad that it's ending.
I do want to say,
ahead,
you think it's ending, but I keep talking. So I do want to say, though, in terms of religion, the religion question, I think it's really important not to jump from LDM, and this is what I would say, to like a rebound church. I don't think you want to do that. I think you want to give yourself space to heal. And oh my goodness, like, if you are looking, for religion, it could be that you are looking for nourishment for your soul. There are quite a few resources that I have that might help you, and it's just like podcasts, YouTube videos.
If you have Netflix, Explained, and then there's an
so
episode.
It's actually Colts Explained.
Colts Explained.
Yeah.
We watched that when we were still in the church, and we were like, why do all these things apply to us?
Yes, that's a good resource. But I'm talking more about like if you want to get close to God, and if you want to, I don't know, if you feel like you need to pray, if you feel like what you need is that closeness to God, then there are resources like there's just podcasts and YouTube videos that I would see, and that really helped me. And in fact, I was still in church, or I was still in LDM when I heard a lot of them, and I would just pray, and I'd be like, God, I'm so sorry. Why does it feel better when I listen to this than when I go to church? Like, there's something wrong with me. But it was actually my soul being nourished there. So we would love to leave some of those resources right here for you. I don't think that the answer is religion. I don't think that it's imperative or it's something that you have to look up right now. I think that you matter. I think that you matter, and I think that God is a very personable God, and I think that you can trust him, that he will meet you wherever you are at. So some videos and some podcasts can start helping you with that. And if you believe in something else, or if you're happy not believing in anything, at least at the moment, I feel like that sounds kind of condescending. Like, oh my
Not at
gosh,
all.
we will go over like everything that we've been through for sure. It's not condescending at all. But I would just say, if you let us, we would love to be part of your community. And I know that there are so many people here who are hurt by what happened because they love people, and because we did have a community and we were all lied to. So I would just encourage you guys that we can rely on each other. And I also loved seeing the messages and just the back and forth that was already happening.
Z-Type said their father died a few years ago, and now their mom says that her life is LDM. So she told me she will die with her faith. I get that.
I am so sorry.
I'm sorry you went through that loss, and I'm sorry for, I'm sure that there is some awkwardness at the very least in your relationship with your mom. But I think that there is always I think that there's always a path forward where there is love. And so I'm sorry I can't be more helpful, but you're not alone for sure. Patricia Galvan, everything is overwhelming. Yes, it has been. It was for a very long time for us, but
that's all you needed.
We're happy to be doing this more.
Yes, and that's what we want to say. Take some time for yourself. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to, just take some time. There's actually a song that really helped me. My friend Genesis shared it with me. I think it's called Tell Your Heart to Beat Again. And I know it's a Christian song. And I know it sounds cheesy, but it really did help, because it just says, it just talks about how, like, sometimes you just need to move on. You need to say goodbye to yesterday and know that you're no longer in yesterday. I guess you're not longer in the same circumstances. But
Yeah.
and that song is called "Tell Your Heart to Beat Again." Can we pin stuff, or can we like
We'll
add some resources?
Yeah, I will add everything into the video description if you want to come back to it later.
Okay, that's perfect.
And then Red 7 said, same, my mother is on antidepressants and we have a history of mental health issues, so I tread carefully. Definitely take it slow and take time. That's one of the things that I resent's too strong of a word, that I feel bad about, that so many people were pushed away from seeking professional help because prayer was supposed to be enough, but that is definitely not the case. In or out of the church, always seek help.
And I know people will say, well, not really. We were taught that you are actually supposed to seek medical help. Yeah, it depends on where you live and what pastors you have.
It depends on the minister. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, and
it depends on their mood at
so
times.
Please don't take this as us like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Don't take this as us just like wanting to talk smack or anything like that. It's everybody did have these particular experiences in LLDM, but we are very sorry that you're going through that. I do think it's better when you go through it together. It was really hard. We kind of went through it by ourselves. His parents weren't out and my parents weren't out yet. My parents are still, my mom is still in, so we completely understand that pain. It's awful, but we know we're doing the right thing, so I think that keeps me going too. Anything else?
Bianca, we do miss getting together in a community. We have to figure out a way to kind of, I mean, we don't want anybody to kind of like come out in a, for lack of a better term, before they're ready. But I think that we are ready to put ourselves out there more. And somebody mentioned really early in this chat, Austin, Texas in the house. And so now in my mind, if we're ever in Texas, I hope that we can reach out and continue to be in contact and get together, because I would like to play some volleyball at some point. At least once a week. That sounds good to us. We are definitely, we have too much to say right now.
We have so much. I'm so sorry, you guys.
I feel so insufficient and unprepared, but Red 7, definitely we want to continue to be respectful, and thank you for joining. And as someone who is agnostic, I know we kind of referenced God a lot and stuff, but you know, we want to get to that as well, because our understanding of God has also evolved. And it's something that we want to talk about, because you don't have to believe in God the way LDM preaches God.
No.
And anyways, that's a lot. I have a lot more to say on that.
And I'll just add really quickly, because I know that a big fear is condemnation. God did make salvation very accessible, like a lot more accessible than we were taught. So you're not getting out of LLDM doesn't condemn you, if it helps to hear that.
Definitely.
Any other thing you want to
I just want to address these last ones. Sorry. Jasmine, definitely not alone. We need an ex-LDM Las Vegas meetup.
We should do that.
We definitely should do that.
How does July sound, or August?
Can I just say how lucky you are to have each other and be on the same page? So cool you guys have each other. I know, I pretty much know what you mean, and have hope. Like I said earlier, and this is something we want to talk about as well in the future, more in depth. Where there is love, there is a path forward. It might not mean the same thing to everyone, but your relationship with your partner is way more valuable. That, you know, if this were more important than that, like the LLDM church teaches to leave your partner if they don't agree. But the fact that that hasn't happened and that you're still struggling through this, to me, tells me that, this is your relationship is more important. Please hold on a little longer. Kay and Ana Enriquez, it's hard going through it alone. I know what you mean, but as far as we are concerned, you're not alone, and I
You don't have to go through it alone.
definitely. And
there's us. My Instagram handle is at PrayGirl.
Karina Gray, so nice to see you, and thank you for joining. We're so happy to talk to you guys.
Isn't it crazy that like we're here now? Baby, isn't it crazy that this is happening? Like, can we just talk about that for just 1 minute? How crazy it is. Like when we first got out, we were just like, whoa. Like they were just, I would be cooking or we would be just, I don't know, dealing with our puppy, and we would just be like, whoa, like what on earth just happened and what is happening?
Yeah.
But you don't have to go through it alone. I think that like, there are just so many blessings in disguise, and I think that this is one of them, that we have each other. We really do. And to Kay, I did want to say I'm really sorry that you're going through that, and I'm really sorry that you guys aren't on the same page. But I do love what Misael said about love, and about love being able to, I don't know, to conquer it all sounds really like
Hallmark movie quote.
Yeah, but
it's true.
But just when you speak with love,
and sorry.
Yeah, interrupt me.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
When it comes to being on the same page, there's so many pages. You don't have to be on the same page on everything. And I think that's what I kind of want to also, get to at some point. Like, what page are you on? Because a big part of this is like, what are your goals? If your goals line up, then like you're solid, and believing in one church, believing another church, like that's not always as important as knowing you're both headed in the same direction, which for many couples is, I want to raise my kids as best as I can. I want to be happy with you. I want our future I want us to be invested in each other's future. There's so many pages that you can sync up on, that if a few here and there are not in sync, that's perfectly okay. Anyways, that's my point of view, right? And then Genesis says, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Amen.
And just going back to what you were saying to Kay, yes, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. I think it would be hard in a lot of instances. Do they get baptized here? If
Right.
not, where are they going to get baptized? So I do know that there's like just a lot of conflict and a lot of things that can be very,
I'm not trying to
very
belittle
different.
the issue at all.
Right. But even with all of that, I do believe that love can be a major factor and can be just so helpful, especially when you're navigating through something that is so very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, the last thing I wanted to say was, guys, this is so hard. Nason pled guilty, and I'm sure that a lot of us are filled with grief. A lot of us are filled with confusion. A lot of us are furious. A lot of us are filled with so many emotions, and maybe all at once. But we do need to slow down. And I would just like to say that because this is the lady who went to our supermarket yesterday, and as I was going down the aisles, I was just crying my eyeballs out. And I was like, oh my goodness, people are gonna think I am a crazy lady. But it just feels like so much to take in, knowing that our whole families aren't out, knowing that this is unjust. I mean, a lot of LDM members are saying that the system is corrupt because he had to plead guilty. I think it's corrupt because he didn't get He didn't get to go through a trial that would have been fair to the Jane Does, and they matter. So I know that there's just...
We agree with you, Bianca.
I know that there's just so many mixed emotions here, but we do need to slow down because, like I said, thinking critically is just so very important. It's important for you, it's important for your health, and it'll be important for your relationships with your family members who maybe are still in. And just because they're not out now doesn't mean that we have to lose hope. And if it brings you peace, oh my goodness, I could just go on forever. If it brings you peace to just distance yourself a little bit, I think that putting yourself first right now is going to be imperative. Right now, it's the time to heal, and right now, it's the time to focus on yourself. There will be time for the rest. Like I said, yesterday I was crying. Today, I actually spoke to a close friend of mine who has been personally affected by all of this, and she's the one who kind of helped me navigate some of my thoughts and just saying that even though she was affected by this, she hasn't lost hope. Gave me more hope. So I hope I can also transfer that to you a little bit.
Kay says, you guys need to make a series while we all recover from this trauma. 1 hour was too little. I feel so pressured right now because I'm like, I said 1 hour and everybody's going to be like, you talk forever. No, to me.
No, it's me. It's me. I talk so long. You should have known. You should have known. He was like, aren't you nervous? And I was like, no, I'm just going to be talking to you.
I was super nervous.
He was like, I'm super nervous. But yeah, we'll prepare a little bit more next time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We'll do this again, definitely. Probably next week again, just because I think this is so helpful. And I saw people talking to each other, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
And I hope that more people will also feel, that wanting to reach out to their local, no longer part of the church community, if that's your choice.
I'm excited to go through the comments later, but if you guys would do me one last favor, I would like to know how you guys think this worked out, or if you have like any suggestions, if you think we should talk to each other more, or this because that's what I thought we were gonna do, like just speak to each other a little bit more. And a lot of the times when you were speaking, it kind of, because you were going through the messages, it kind of like I couldn't get to the points that I wanted to make, if that makes sense. No, that's okay. Like, I'm not saying my points were like that important, but what I am saying is that we could plan to have it this way, or we can plan to speak to each other more, and I want to know how you guys feel it works better for you. Maybe we could even have people like join on video if like anybody would be interested in doing that. But I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. I think you can tell. So.
All right. Well, there was something I was about to say. I was about to say, based on what you were saying, just because somebody's not out today doesn't mean that that's the end of it. There's people that are going to be in shock for a while. We were in shock for a while, this takes time. But definitely, I think the most important thing we can do right now is to, be there for one another, so that's what we hope to do with this. Can I just say, I love you guys. I love you. Thank you for doing this with me. And I don't want to just end it and then cut everybody off if you guys are...
I love you too. And you guys, like, we can be a community. I do miss my community. I do miss like knowing that I had a community, even though sometimes I was, with some people it was kind of toxic. But we can be our own community and we can make it not toxic. So if you guys are interested in that, love you guys too.
So just like we said, it was an hour and a half, just as planned. All right. Well, till next time.
Yeah. God bless you guys.
God bless you.
and end.